and ask Gary if he would lead us with karakia to set the tone for the meeting.
Kia ora, Chair. Kai atu rangatira tēnā koutou. Hoki mai rā ai ta tāhu hoa tēnei whare, karangatia nei, ko te whare kaunihera arohea te mataua Māui e mihi tēnā koutou hoki mai rā.
Kia ora.
Kia koutou rā e matakanohi mai rā kai roto ki tēnei. Mike and Council Chambers. Tēnei te mihi atu. Me noi tata, our karakia is on the app. You won't need the app, of course. Will, did you want to lead us?
Oh yeah, don't need that. Sure, Lee. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. Whakataka te hau ki te toki. Kia mā ki uta. Kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana pia te kura. E huka. E hei uhu. Ti hei mauni ora. Stori.
Just to always be on the alert that we might sort of throw it out sometime. And that's just for me to test familiarity and be able to report back to you, Chair, how confident and competent we are in terms of our karakia. Thank you.
The competency is raised dramatically, stunningly, since you've been leading us. Councillor Van Beek.
If that is the case, can I actually say my own karakia rather than the one that you propose?
Sure.
Would you like to lead us next time?
I'll lead in my own, but I won't in the one that you're using. I'll lead in my own karakia.
Absolutely.
And I might do it in my own language, I may do it in English.
Choice.
Exciting. Welcome then, Chair.
I'd welcome it in your own language. Right. I've got two things I need to do before we move on. Firstly, any apologies? Any White? Any other apologies?
No.
Being none, would somebody care to move the apologies be sustained? Jacqueline? Martin? All those in favour will say aye. Contrary, no, carried. There are no notices I'm advised of. Conflicts of interest declarations. Anybody got a conflict of interest they'd like to declare? If not, they can have any sins they'd like to declare. We'll listen to them too. No? All right. Now, the first two submitters have failed to turn up, so I'll stand the meeting to adjourn until 12:30.
Yeah, I was just going to observe that confidence and competence aren't necessarily the same thing, are they? It was good to have confidence.
Yes.
A number of 3 submissions, and the first one on the list for us today is from Wairoa, the Mayor of Wairoa. So, with applause, a round of applause, I'd welcome the Mayor of Wairoa to come to the table.
Good.
And the rules, let's just be clear about this, 10 minutes.
Yep, good goal. Can I take this off? Or, yeah, sweet.
You can do. We want to hear it full noise.
I'm hard enough to breathe as it is without the mask on. How are you?
So we've 10 minutes, and
Yeah.
the more time you take in telling us what you think, the less time there is for questions. So,
But you do have the power to extend it if you want, I'm sure.
we run here with an iron fist.
Yeah.
And that wobbly
Starting
rules,
early, so we must get the extra
like they do
15
around
minutes.
Wairoa.
And you take into account the 2 or 3 hours it's taken us to get here.
Yeah.
Kia ora, Chair.
Kia ora, Tiri.
Hei te rangi nei ki Waipuke hea nei te āhuriri. Kei runga i te Wairoa ho pūpū ho ngene mātangi rau tāpoko rau e tai nei. Tai hoki rā ki tēnā ngā awa kei rungi a koe rā e Chance. Kia koe rā e Dwayne. E rua ngā awa e tai nei te rangi. Ko mōhaka, ko te Wairoa, tēnei te mihi kia koe rā te koromatua. Tai hoi a koe rā e te kai kauni hera e Chance. Me ki rā i ēnā ngā manuhiri e tai nei mai i a rā kai pāka, mai i a te Wairoa putanoa, kai hoki rā kia pāha wera kānui te mihi. Nō reira nau mai hoki mai, e hara tēnei me ki raha tauhau, kei runga ki tēnei o ngā āhuatanga. Engari kai konei rā ngā kai kauni hera, tō tātou nei tiamana, me te tumu hakarai mai te kauni hera arohe a te matawa Māui e mihi. Haere mai, nau mai, hoki mai rā, tērā kōtou.
Oh, nā mihi nui, Petty, for giving us an extra 5 minutes. That's great, thank you. Which ones do we...
You could use the down arrow on the keyboard, I think.
Yeah, that one there. Yep. Cool.
Ka pai no reira tēnā tātou. Tēnā koutou, ngā rangatira o tēnei whare. Nei rā, te rohe o te Wairoa whānui, e tau nei ki runga nei ki a koutou i tēnei wai te kaupapa o te rā. Mai te rohe-rohenga o Ngāti Rākai Pāka rāke ko te whare rata, tai atu rā ki runga ki Ngāti Ruapani ko Waikare Mona, tai noa ti atu rā ki te awa o Waikare o Ngāti Pāhauera ko mātou enei, ngā kārangaranga maha e mihi kau atu ana ki a koutou katoa. It's a pleasure to present to you today and to support His Worship the Mayor. I'll speak first because Craig will have the most to say. But I just want to open with saying that you're in an unenviable position. And we understand that a lot of the issues that we have and a lot of the issues that submitters will have over the coming, the time ahead and the submissions that you've received are mostly not your fault, but people that are on a higher pay scale that seem to be... we seem to be having a lot of issues with lately. But if we didn't submit our concerns, then we wouldn't be doing justice to the people that we represent. And so I'd just like to say that we agree in principle with Māori wards. We completely support them, but we don't think that the current proposal will quite fit the bill. If the purpose of introducing Māori wards is to empower tangata whenua to be part of the decisions that affect them, their whānau, their whenua, their whakapapa, then I think that we can make some tweaks and changes. Also, the other point that we'd like to stress is that we cannot afford to open up our constituency or our ward much bigger, based on the fact that we already have the third largest river catchment in the country in our area, and when you add the Mōhaka, which is another huge catchment, and the wider area from the Wharerata to Mahia all the way down to the Waikare, that's already enough for one person to represent. And if we take 2,000 voters or half of our eligible voters out of Wairoa and put them onto the Māori roll, and then we add the same amount again from the area extending south to the Esk, then that waters down our ability to be how we believe to be effectively represented as well. So those are my points tonight.
Sure, Chance. Yeah, as Chance said, we totally agree with the Māori wards, the journey you're on, and well done for getting on the journey and making a decision like you did. I'm a bit worried that are Michelle and Charlie in the naughty seats back there, are they? They seem to be right at the back room.
Permanently.
And hope that's not going to be a further push out or an extension for Wairau at the back there somewhere. So we think, Māori wards are good, but I think the review should have concentrated on introducing the Māori wards only. And it feels like and I know it's not intentional, that the rest of the representation about Wairau has been slipped under the carpet a little bit. And a lot of people didn't pick up that it wasn't only about Māori wards, it was about Wairau's boundary getting moved out. Yes, I understand there's a plus or minus 10%, but there is a bit in the legislation that actually, I'll get to it in a minute, that says you can, you don't have to consider that, but I'll get to that in a minute. So we're really concerned because Wairau is an area of interest. It's 29%. Roughly of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council area, and under the proposal I think we get up to about 49%. So that's one person representing 49%, and then you've got, and the unintended consequence of the Māori wards is you've got a southern and northern, so we're actually starting to feel like, well actually we may not even get a Wairau person on either because of just, but it's a difficult, whatever you do is going to be difficult. So we're just saying recognise Wairau as a community of interest. I've been told continually by the iwi up in Wairau and others that, when Māori people speak for Wairau down here in the Bay, they're actually not speaking on our behalf. And, and that's what I've learned from day one. And I only just got told that the other day around the Three Waters as well. So just consider that one person doesn't speak on our behalf. Wairau people seem to be pretty well pushy, would it be, Chance? And they like to decide their own future. Hey, this is a bit there, and I hope you're all fully aware of it. I shouldn't have to put it up. I'd say if the Regional Council or the Commission considers the effective representation of communities of interest so requires, constituencies may be defined and membership distributed between them in a way that does not comply with subsection 2. So, I just hope we've been through this path before, and I know if the Māori wards goes with whatever way, we will have only people in the general role voting in Wairau, but we are still representing our rohi, and we want that to stay that way, and we don't want to be chucked in across the way down to Airedale Valley. That's going to completely dilute Wairau's say in the future and our area of interest. And I can't see Airedale really wanting to be involved in Wairau. It's over the hill. And we just feel like we fit that niche of being a community of interest. I would say a bit, Chance, and you might want to jump in. So, and also please consider that, hey, if this happened, probably 8 or 9 years ago, Wairau wasn't in a good place. Our population is continually going up. Presently, we need another 150 houses tomorrow, and prediction is up to 500 houses in the next few years at least, and that probably won't even keep ahead of the rush of people coming home. As we know, people are coming home everywhere, and I always remember before I joined the council we'd have wonderful things happening around the rest of New Zealand, but Wairau never seemed to climb, and we're making up for lost time, I believe. I'll get you. Do you want to talk on this one, Dance? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So basically, what is a community of interest? Yeah, okay, we're a region, which should be but regions aren't really communities, are lots of communities. And Wairau is a community of interest. We've always have been. It's really probably late, and I think James, I can say, and Rick, all of us working together better. Wairau's considering itself part of Hawke's Bay now, but in the past we used to talk of Hawke's Bay as down this end and not our end. And we also, talk of Te Rāwhiti up the other way too. So we're getting a lot better, but working with Hawke's Bay as an Inc, all of us, but we still consider ourselves a community of interest of how we do things. Tātou o Te Wairau consider themselves a community of interest, and they make the decisions for themselves. So we're a little bit concerned, and and that's what I've said there. I don't have to read it to you. It says it all really. Yeah. is rooted in a well-established community. Proposed boundaries.
So not only did we come with issues, but we also came with solutions. When I said that commented that the Māori wards in the proposed northern and southern might not be the best way of empowering, the most appropriate way of empowering the tangata whenua voice. The solution, as I see it, is to introduce a third, so that we have northern Māori, southern Māori, and an urban Māori ward here for the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. So urban encompassing the Hastings, Napier cities, and then splitting the rest. This going to our next slide.
Yep.
The second part of the representation model, as Craig's alluded to, is what happens with our general ward seat for Wairoa, and we think that it should stay the same for the same reasons as I gave in the beginning, that it's already quite a substantial piece of work on its own, and if Wairoa cannot secure a seat at this table to make the strategic decisions and have influence on the strategic decisions that need to be made, especially in light of the huge developments that are going to be happening with regard to horticulture, ipso facto water and land use in Wairoa over the next 10 years, then we're going to be all the poorer for it. And although Regional Council has a presence in terms of management on the ground, unless we're sure to have someone at this table, then those strategic contributions can't be made.
I'll just go back to that one there. So basically, Wairoa to Wairoa is the whole district. The heart is Wairoa, the township, and that's the bit that keeps us alive, keeps us going. And if you move that boundary out to probably the half of Hawke's Bay, there's no way that our heart will be able to completely keep beating to keep a lot of people who probably don't even know much about Wairoa. Yeah, so I just think please consider that. Don't just look on, the legislation says you don't have to look just on the population only. We have a massive area and we really want to be treated in that way that Wairoa, we do struggle with a lot of things, getting things we want. This is just the catchment zones. There's 2 in Wairoa already. We're going to add another one to Wairoa. So the rest of the zones, what's that, another 5, another 4 will be in the rest of Hawke's Bay. So, it's a big ask for one representative to take in another zone. So please listen to us. Look, as you know, and you've heard me harp on for many years, it's hard enough to get our voice across now. Examples, Regional Park, yes, you brought it back in the plan, and I thank you for that. It wasn't quite the amount of money or the putia we were talking about, but it's a start, and we're pretty happy about that. But please, it can be pretty frustrating in Wairoa, living up in there over the Great Divide. Me or you?
You go.
Thank you. So basically, represent Wairoa as a community of interest by maintaining current boundaries, recognise Regional Council's role in water and land, and represent these accordingly. Introduce a third Māori ward. I know that's probably not what you ever intended, but Māori wards aren't easy in the Wairoa District Council. It was probably easy for us. It was even split up the middle. Don't be scared of Māori wards. I think it's been the best thing for Wairoa, but I believe that the people who got on in Wairoa would have got on the general ward. It's probably one of the best councils I've sat around, and understand that once someone gets on in the Māori ward, they actually represent the whole of the community as well. So, empower tangata whenua to engage in decisions that affect them, their whenua and their whakapapa. I've just put that just in case you missed it in the first part. You might get it on the end. So that's pretty well us. Is anything else, Chance? Just, we're really concerned, but just be aware that the community knew nothing about this. It was just something. Fenton's had a little bit of input in our presentation today as well. He's And Charlie, I know you had a good write-up in the Waira Star the other day, so thank you for that. You know, it's really pleasing to see. Right, that's us, so then we'll just put this up so you don't have to introduce, we'll know who's coming next.
Okay, thank you for that, Mayor Craig. I'll now open it up for questions from councillors. So who's got a question? Let's start. Martin, Councillor Williams.
Kōrua, Mayor Craig and Chance, thank you for being with us today. Assuming that we stuck with, as I believe we're required to, the 2 Māori constituencies in the proposal, where do you say the boundary of the Wairoa general constituency should be? Where it is now, exactly, or any increase at all? We'll just leave it right where it is. There is another submitter, for example, who suggested moving it down to the Waikato River, but any thoughts?
Well, the Waikato River would be acceptable, but ideally to leave the boundary where it is at the moment.
And I think with that actually the boundary is the Wairau Council's boundary as well.
Charlie?
Yeah, kia ora, so when you're suggesting that we keep the status quo, we need to sort of have a timeline on that. So perhaps the next, because we're going to grow our population, perhaps the next triennium will see us split, because then we actually don't know what will happen to for the non-Māori vote, do we, until we actually try it. So maybe the next triennium should at least see us into the as to where we're going with this. Because at the moment, this was all about the Māori wars.
That's absolutely right, Charlie, and it was, and I think this is unintended consequences. And I think, yeah, and let's see what happens to Waira. Like if I'd been here 10 years ago, you probably would have thought I was a dreamer thinking the Waira population was going to grow, but we know it's growing daily. So please just tie ho and give us a little bit of a chance.
Any other questions before I go to the wall? Mike Paku.
Ka me kia kōrua, te Wairoa hopu pui mātaki rau. Tēnei o mihi mō koutou, takatoa koutou koero I tēnei ai. So thank you both for your commentary this afternoon, absolutely appreciate it. And I fully understand and empathise with the position that you find yourselves in. It has a whole lot of some similarities to the conversation that's currently taking place at Hastings District Council and what it's doing in regards to the makeup of the general seats and the manoeuvring that's taking place there. I do take your point in regards to the 3 seats. Quite naturally, I'm going to be supportive of that, but for slightly different reasons. And you have kind of touched on them. So one is tangata whenua versus mana whenua, urban versus rural. As we know, Waino and much of the rural Hawke's Bay, mana whenua still occupy their lands. But when we come into the urban setting, where we have mātawa or tangata whenua who have migrated into the cities, and we have that conflict between who represents Māori. And as we know, it comes down to the democratic vote, and it's not always, if you like, mana whenua being able to have their views expressed at that table due to the make-up of those boundaries. Wairoa, I suppose, has the advantage over everyone else in that you've had 3 years of experience, I think it's 3 years, 5 years now, of experiencing Māori wards. My observation of this particular process is that, to a certain degree, Māori wards have taken the heat or the current conversations around the general seats and how they need to accommodate the establishment of Māori wards. Did you go through this situation yourselves in the establishment of Māori seats in Wairoa?
No, I think they're just general elected at large, but by the Māori registered voters on the Māori roll.
So, Mike, we never had wards out in the rural areas. We were all elected at large. And so Māori wards are the same because it would have been too difficult to try and get boundaries and that across Wairoa. Wairoa's a little bit different than the rest of Hawke's Bay too in the way we work. You know, we don't work as, non-Māori, Māori, what's good for non-Māori. You know, we work, what's good for Wairoa is good for everybody. And we've just done that all the time. And the Māori wards, probably some would say we don't need them, but they're here, and I'm quite happy about it because that's just the way we've always had a 50-50 makeup of our council.
So given that, how does that align with your submissions that you put up today?
Because we're saying that Wairoa is a community of interest, and we want to keep it that way. So if you go northern southern, unlikely the Māori representative will be able to stand and get through on a Māori ward in the northern end, because they would probably the numbers will be down this way.
But just make the point, this is a time-limited debate. I've got two other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got...
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair.
Right.
My question hopefully is simple, Your Worship. You mentioned that since the establishment of Māori wards in Wairoa, there was some hesitancy and some challenges and thinking to overcome to get to that position, but now that Wairoa has a cohesive and joined council with Māori elected representatives on your team, your comment today was that it has been better, or I think much better than what you were anticipating. Would you give me, because we have through some submissions and feedback in the community that introducing Māori wards will be detrimental to the democracy of any institute that does it. So from Wairoa's experience, you mentioned in your submission that you found that experience to be good. Could you give me a bit more detail around what
absolutely.
Your experience was?
So when the vote went out, we had a vote probably 6 years before that. It didn't go through. When the vote went out, it only went through by 54 to 40. So a lot of Māori didn't vote for it for a start. So that was a little bit of contention, and saying that the council, I said, it's as good as any council, if not better. And it's fact, never be scared of it. Like I say, Wairoa's a little bit different because we had general wards, and 2 Māori ladies got on the general ward. So people don't vote like that in Wairoa. We actually vote for the person, and I think we are. I get told that time and time again. So there's nothing to be scared of, and we don't sit at the table and have the Māori wards at one end and the general role at the other, because we just sit around the table as one, because that's the way Wairoa is. But I think it gave, and Chance, you can speak for yourself, it gave Melissa and Danica, probably empowered them to stand where they may not have thought that they were good enough or would have the chance of getting in on a general role. So that, I think, I can't talk on Chance's behalf, I know those two, would that be correct?
Yeah, all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Craig. Councillor Foss.
Thanks very much. I have huge sympathy for where you are, and perhaps maybe we should have done a bit more work ourselves as a council, strategically thinking about the consequences of some of our decisions. But anyway, can you just help me in that this is all about a balancing act. So at the end of the day, your proposal or the proposal that's in front of us, there's about either 6,000-ish people on the general Wairoa roll, or potentially, 4,800 or something, I think. So if I live in Hastings and they have 3 councillors who each represent, on average, about 16,000 people, and Napier's about the same, and Naroro's about the same, and Central Hawke's Bay's about the same. I understand Wairoa's the most important place, very special and different. So just kind of help me through it to look people in the eye in Hastings and Napier and the other constituencies. Hey, look, we've decided upon this version. Okay, you've got other reasons or thoughts other than just it's different in Wairoa?
So number one, I've been betting on about money up in Wairoa. I've been told continue it's not just on the population, so that's number one. We have a huge area that one person has to make sure, Charlie at the moment, that everything gets done to what the people want. That's a huge role. I think it's a bigger role than your people in Hastings because they can share the load on the same area of land. You have 3 representatives in Napier as well, I think. And for me, I think they've probably got the easiest role. In saying that, there's a lot of problems in Napier too, as we know. So your intended move is going to be one person is going to represent the whole of Hawke's Bay, half of it. And for me, that's a mighty job. That map we had earlier on, it shows the the catchments we've already got. It's huge. So for us to ensure that things get done properly, we need that our community is looked after.
2 last questions. Councillor Van Beek, I'll take the last question and then we're finished. We're on to the next submission.
Thank you. It feels... Sorry. Is this on?
Yeah.
It feels a bit like you're forgetting about Ngāti I want to make a point first. I've learned in the good book it says you always take the worst seat, and then the host may actually bring you forward into a seat of more representation, more status. That's why Charlie and I actually are humble people and actually be sitting in the back. That's one of the reasons. Anyway, so Ngāti is the seat that I represent. I haven't heard you mention it yet, and I represent 19,000 at the moment. A huge, huge area. You know, when I stood for Ngāti I didn't know where it started and where it finished, and I still don't really know because nobody can really tell me. Because you've got one street that one side is Hastings, and the other side is Ngāti, so it's quite difficult. So representing 19,000 people from Waimarama all the way to past Esk is a very vast and different region. So it's no different than what you are looking at in the Wairau district, what we're proposing. Secondly, is I think you're looking at all from a very negative point of view. You actually have got an opportunity here because you actually could have 2 people from Wairau. If you do your job right, you could have 2 people from Wairau representing on this table here. So you're only looking from a negative side, I believe. You should look at it from a different perspective, what the opportunities are for Wairau, especially if it's going to grow in numbers. Thank you.
Right.
Do we get to respond?
Briefly, because it wasn't actually, it was a statement, not a question. So.
Oh, well, then it shouldn't have been made.
That's right. No, I did say, have you looked?
He did say, have you looked? Fair enough, yes, he's right. Anyway,
so the answer...
It's a very freewheeling system.
The answer is no. And actually in response to the comment that you made, you look at the District Health Board, Wairau has never, ever had a person on there that wasn't ministerial appointment. That is the situation that we find ourselves in. And if it goes, the current proposal goes ahead as it is, then we've got no chance. And you might say that that's negative. It's not, and it is, but it's the reality that we face every day. Our people are going to be, our Māori roll voters are going to be subsumed by everyone north, Napier and north, because there's far more people on population than what we have, the few thousand that we have in Wairau. And then taking those out of the Wairau ward, those votes out of the Wairau ward, and then adding almost the same number again from the area south of Mohaka to the Esk is only going to further cripple our ability to have a voice at the table. That's the reality. And you might see it as being negative. So do we. That's why we're trying to come up with answers that turn this thing into a positive, and positive for Wairau.
Thank you. I just want to preface my question with a statement from the previous representative of Wairau, who also chaired the Regional Council, Fenton Wilson, who was writ large in Wairau Star, which you are a great fan of reading, boasting that the... Sorry?
Hopefully you are as well.
Yeah, I am boasting that the Regional Council spends more money in the Wairau district than it collects in rates by a long way. And he was factually correct. So how do you square that with the statement you've got here? When it comes to funding, Wairau always misses out.
Okay. So, yeah, quite simple. Rick, I guess you spend a lot more on the rest of Hawke's Bay as what you receive in rates too.
No.
You don't?
No.
Is that a fact?
It's a fact.
We'll look into that. I don't believe that. So we've got we're nearly 1/3 of the community.
I'm not telling lies.
Yeah. So let's get the facts on that one. So a lot of that funding has been government funding coming in too, and that's great. But don't forget, Fenton was the chairman when he said that statement, and he was probably backing his, and we've always struggled to get money. The regional park is a fine example.
I'll give you we'll get the facts. All right, thank you very much. I just want to note for you that
1/3 of Hawke's Bay we are presently.
Yeah, I just want you to note that the time running on the clock now is. Now let me get the clock.
We'll make up for the time that you stole off your last presentation.
27 minutes and 54
well
seconds.
Well done, Rick.
Mr Chair,
That's great, thank you.
no,
Sorry.
how far the submitters have travelled, I do think.
Oh, yeah, no, it's true. I think you had a fair say. Good discussion.
One of the things they said they put in my submission was that I should mention that we'd love to see a few of you up in our place as well.
I'll see you again at the East End.
It was lovely there on Monday.
You'll be there Monday?
I was there on Monday.
Yeah, you should have come and seen me.
They always tell me when I ask after you're out of town.
Yeah. This is the first time I've been out of town since lockdown in August. How's that?
You buy a razor.
You just come here and haven't had a shave because I'm going to get razors.
Good idea. Okay. You got to love it.
Are you going to keep order, Mr Chair, or just let it roll?
Yeah, you know I've been a hopeless disciplinarian, don't you? Just ask my kids.
Thanks a minute.
Sorry? Give it up. Welcome, and I'll let you introduce yourselves, but just to tell you that we're going to rule with an iron fist from now on. 10 minutes, and questions only from the councillors, no statements. All right.
A hoi anō kei aku nuia, kei aku rahi, arauranga tira mā, ngā memo te kauni hera, ngā apiha o tira te tai o ngā memo te komiti Māori. Te komiti Māori tēnei o te kauni hera o te wairu, tēnei ka mihi atu. O tira, ko Henare Mita tōku ingo, no nuhaka ahau. Anei, te tai anō o ngā mema, a mana whakapua ki kia koutou, ko Waiaia. Hoi anō, a tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou. Do you want to introduce yourself, Liz? And then I'll...
Tēnā tātai. My name is Elizabeth Palmer. I'm from Vital. I'm here to support Henare. I'm on the Māori Standing Committee as well, as Henare's said. And yeah, I'm here from Waital, for Waital people.
I take it that you've already read our submission, and
yes.
And actually the Mayor and the Councillor Timotaro Clark has already stolen a lot of our thunder, so I don't want to have to go through the process of repeating it. But I do want to emphasise, though, the amount of work that was put into mobilising, especially the Māori vote, in order to get the wards introduced. I know Michelle, it's actually good that Michelle is here, Michelle and Katerina Kawana. The amount of work they put into getting marae, different organisations, to place submissions, is huge. And so it's with some apprehension that we look at the present proposal, that in fact what we thought would be very good for Wairoa could in many ways be really disadvantage us, in that our votes, which will already be split when we come to vote into the Māori role and the general role, then we will be up against, as the councillor for the Ngāruroro has already pointed out, up against those who are members of his constituency. So we do ask that you look at this proposal again. We also put up a 3-ward system for the Māori seat constituencies, but that in many respects was out of desperation to hopefully bring greater alignment with your 10% threshold. Hoi anō, ko tērā. I'll leave it up to Liz to add to whatever she needs to.
Well, like Henare said, Councillor Chance has stolen our thunder, so we don't want to waste any more time on repeating ourselves. But yeah, we hope you all strongly consider our submission, and in fairness to us in Te Wairo, as you all know, we are very unique up in Wairo, and we have been disadvantaged in a lot of ways, many ways than just this. So that's all I have to say. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Elizabeth and Henare. Can I just firstly acknowledge your submission and say that I also like to acknowledge, as you have done, the work of Michelle and Katarana. I thought they were simply outstanding, worthy of your recognition. So thank you. Do you have any questions? Yes, Councillor Lambert.
You obviously agree that we should leave the wide or general consent role alone, and just for Councillor Van Bake's peace of mind, we realised that the Central Hawke's Bay Naururu was one big ward at one point, and they realised actually they had two representations, they split it up. But the reality is that keeping the Wairua ward the same won't have any effect on the Naururu at all. Is that right in your opinion?
Yes, if we retain the status quo, yes.
Exactly. And the last one I want to point out, please, is that obviously you've got a Māori role and a general role. But the reality of the current situation is that no one can change the role for another 3 years, 6 years. No one can change their role at all. So if those Māori wanted to be on the general, they can't change. And vice versa, there's already a lot of Māori on the general role right now, and they can't change back the other way. So do you agree that if we left Wairua as it is for at least this triennium, those people would actually sort out which role they're going to be on in 3 years' time?
Yeah, well, my argument actually is that we keep the status quo, because the worrying thing is that when we advocated for Māori seats, we didn't realise that it will impact the general seat, the Wairua general seat as well. So it's it's instead of getting, perhaps, as was mentioned, 2 representatives at this table, because of the proposal, we could end up having no one at this table.
Yeah, that is a reality. That's
Yes.
you're right. Because he's right about the DHB, because someone has to be appointed, and lucky for me,
Yes.
this time around it's me, as well as being on the Regional Council. But one more other point about the situation in Wairua. No, I'll come back to the role later on. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Michelle.
Yeah, kia ora kōrua. Thank you for making the trip down to Napier as we did. My kōrero was about, my question to you is about, it's going to be very difficult with the look at the Māori constituency, how that person's, what do you think of that?
Actually,
I'm here to talk Aaron, and yes, he is on track to come to see you tomorrow.
oh, very good.
Mike, you're on microphone. Mike.
It's got a mute mic.
So you can, yeah, tell all the committee.
Apologies, that wasn't me.
As Councillor Van Bake has just mentioned about his Naruroro constituency, the Māori constituency is from Mahia to the Naruroro, which includes all the suburbs of Napier all the way to Omahu. So there's, the population-wise, there's more in Ohuriri than there is back home. So you're right, we could miss out. Pahuwera could miss out. But there's also, what do you think of all of that? And also all the iwi that are within that area. How could one person represent all of that, all the PSGE, all the TLA? Just want to hear your kōrero on that, Henare.
No, I agree. A Wairua of itself is complex enough. The mayor and the councillor spoke about that the Wairoa is a community of interest because, in truth, it's the largest water catchment in the bay. And I look at Nuhaka alone, how complex dealing with Nuhaka is, and that's just a pokey little place like Nuhaka. Then you got Mahia, Whakaki, Iwite, Wairoa, and you go up to, and it gets more complicated and more complicated. So I don't see how one person, and probably not, if we maintain the present proposal, will be able to deal with all that complexity, as well as and the extent of the constituent, the Māori constituency, especially the northern Māori constituency. They don't have a hope.
One question.
One more.
Are you aware of the membership of Tātou Tātou, of Ngāna Pāhuera, of Ringo Mai Wahine, and Ruapani? And I only say that because those people are all owners and land in Wairoa. Why we don't have a population living there right now, that's great. The actual fact of the matter is there's more people that probably have ownership in Wairoa than there is in Napier, Waihitu. But the law as it stands doesn't allow them to have a vote. Yeah, and I'm talking about landowners from who have shares in our station at Paro, have shares up at Nuhaka and Mahia. But because it's a multiple ownership title, they have just negated from having a vote. If they had a vote, we wouldn't have to worry about these boundaries, because our row would probably surpass about 40,000 in Wairoa. Are you aware of that?
No.
Api.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, just would love to get a bit of more whakaaro from you around a statement you made earlier on. And that was with regards to when HBRC came to the Wairoa community and engaged in this conversation. You said that the impacts of a Māori seat and a general seat and our representation in those spaces perhaps wasn't as explored as deeply as it should have been. So what I heard you say was that the community is concerned around the impacts of representation versus the population in Wairoa. So my question is, do you think that representation is a separate matter to where your population is? Similar to the comment that I heard from Councillor Charlie, because your concerns are around representation at the moment, not perhaps your population base. So how is your community wrestling with that?
No, you're right. It's representation in terms of our population not being great enough to ensure that we get someone sitting at this table. Yes, and because it will be diluted into general and Māori role, it lessens our chances even more. So yes, it's definitely, we definitely didn't articulate that. Well, we didn't consider that it would end up with this kind of proposal. We just thought that Wairoa would have the opportunity to get 2 representatives at this table. Yes, definitely.
So by extension then, the conversation we as HPRC have had with the Wairoa community was around representation, but what I heard you say today was that that has created a division in our community between general role and Māori role now. So when the community was engaged, it was around representation, not boundary discussions and implications over that. So,
no, definitely. Okay. Right. It was about the Māori wards. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're getting close to time. Any one last question? Councillor Foss, final question.
Thanks so much. Given what the HBRC is trying to do across all of Hawke's Bay in regard to water security, climate change, some of our priorities, do you think that things roughly status quo as you're proposing or as you've heard from the Mayor and Councillor will help assist, preserve or enhance or protect our environment because of those things that you're advocating, which I'm hearing just local ownership and knowledge. I don't mean ownership in the property rights, I just mean... so I'll just leave it there, other than I'm trying to reconcile this with the environment doesn't care about the lines on the map that we draw, but the people that live there are very, very, very interested and wanting to preserve things, I think. So can you just address that if you could, or comment on it?
So everyone in Wairoa want to do everything what you just said, preserve. Preservation is key for us in Wairoa. We are passionate about our environment, our natural environment back home, as with our awa and our whenua, our moana, and we want the best for Wairoa and for the people of Wairoa, and we think that's why we put in this submission, responded to this submission for that reason as well. Our environment is huge back home, as we're everywhere around New Zealand, and we are all passionate about our environment back home. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for your very thoughtful submission. And I want also thank you for taking the time and effort to travel here. It's a big time and effort, and I want to say it's very much appreciated. And councillors will give your submission every thought.
Ka pai. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. Next we have the Federated Farmers. Who's here for that?
My excuses, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Travel safe.
Hope you enjoy it.
Over the hill.
Afternoon, Jim Galloway, President Hawke's Bay Federated Farmers.
Thank you, Jim. You've got 10 minutes. You can see we're a very firm and disciplinary organisation here. So,
first of all, I'd like to put an apology in for Alan Newton from the Wairoa branch and Ria Dacent. They couldn't be here today. Obviously, Alan's a fair way down for him. But this is on certainly Wairoa's behalf as well as the Hawke's Bay. We're split. Wairoa is part of Wairoa Gisborne, and Hawke's Bay just does the lower half of Hawke's Bay. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Federated Farmers' primary concern as representation review is retaining rural representation. It's long been a concern for our members and farmers that we're losing representation due to population growth in urban areas. Farmers deserve good representation on regional council for a couple of very good reasons, we think are very good. The rates burden. As individuals, rural people pay comparatively higher rates than urban ratepayers. In the 2021 long-term plan, it shows a $1.5 million property on Napier Hill will pay $386 in rates, which contrasts with a $1.09 million rural property in Wairoa, which will pay $1,937 in rates for the same year, which is 400% more than the Napier urban, despite having a lower capital value. Farmers also have a higher regulatory burden as landowners and stewards of the land and that management of the majority of the natural resources that the regional council regulates under the RMA, land, soil, water and air. Farmers are experienced with the rules and regulations that put limits on their farming activities, whereas an urban person would generally have very limited need to be anything to do with the RMA. The Tank and Tukituk catchment plans require many changes from farmers and even the need to apply for resource consents and many other activities, where urban residents generally have nothing to do with it and continue as normal. We support the retention of the Tamatea CHB, Ngāroro and Mohaka Wairoa as predominantly rural constituencies with one councillor each. We thank our rural councillors for the effort they put in and the miles they travel and their accessibility to the voters. We are hopeful that the candidates for the two new Maori constituencies will have a rural background too, to get even more rural representation. The Mohaka Wairoa constituency, we are concerned that the constituency of the Mohaka Wairoa and the removal of voters from the Maori roll leaves the general voter population here much diminished. We're worried that the 62% representation, minus 62% representation, will not be granted an exemption by the local government, but we are also not convinced that the boundary extension is the solution. It would be useful to know how the table, which is the representation table, compares with the current arrangements, like how many, what is the plus and minus for Wairoa at the moment, and also and for the other wards. Like the proposal, Whetara Farmers agrees the Mohaka Wairoa needs to be considered a community of interest that justifies its deviation from the plus or minus 10% rule. The predominant extensive sheep and beef farming land use, steep terrain, unique resource management issues and solutions, connection to Wairoa as the main town, limited transport connections, the Wairoa District Council all mean the area is unique and deserves its own councillor. We would like to hear why the council thinks the Esk Valley has common values and should be part of that Mohawka Wairoa constituency. Our Mohawka Wairoa members are very doubtful that Esk Valley residents will have much to do with Wairoa. They are justifiably worried that the next councillor may even come from that area and not be accessible to them nor understand their unique issues, very similar to some of the issues the Mayor espoused before. The extension of the Mohaka Wairoa boundary down to the Esk Valley means that the constituency land will have an area of around about 6,900 square kilometres, which is pretty enormous for a single councillor to effectively represent. How much closer to the plus or minus 10% rule does the boundary extension get us? Is it worth the risk of combining the Esk Valley that doesn't have much in common with the rest of Mohaka Wairoa? Maybe it would be worth going the whole hog and keep the current boundary and apply for an exemption anyway.
Thank you. Jim, when this is finished, could you speak to Leanne over here? And she'll make sure she's got your email address and she'll send you the plus or minus tables.
I've got the tables, but it's for the current.
Yeah, you said you didn't
Thank
have
you.
them, so
Yeah.
we've got them, we'll send them to you.
Thank you.
Okay, questions? Councillor Williams?
Thank you. Look, it would be fair to say, Jim, and thank you for being here today, that you're essentially got the same message as to the Wairoa Ngāti boundary as the previous submitters. Just for your interest, as I was intrigued by your comment that we might as well be hung for a lamb as a sheep, I believe was the expression. In other words, it's already well outside the 10%. You're just sort of tweaking. Were you aware that if we were to keep things as they are, and it doesn't sound like you were from your request of Leanne, that it would be about 70%, minus 70%, if we were to keep the boundary where it is, but you'd be happy with that?
Well, that's where we didn't have the numbers to be able to make a decent sort of comment on it, but yeah, it is a concern no matter which way you try and do it.
You're saying that there's little marginal gain in terms of the numbers. You might as well get the principles right and stay with the community of interest. I've actually got a question, Mr. Chair, for our staff as to why they've got any response on why a $1.09 million property in Wairoa pays 4 times the rates as a $1.5 million property in Napier. It's presumably a land value based.
It's capital value. Land value predominantly, but there are also a range of targeted rates such as for biosecurity functions, land management functions as well that get weighted towards rural properties.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Lambert.
Councillor Martin's point, like I got 30 hectares and it's worth 2,500 rates. It's just one of those things. Sorry, are you aware of the, like all the land in Wairoa is rated? Well, I guess not everyone pays the rate, but the fact is there are landowners for all of that land. But do you know how many are Māori owned and are actually classed as absentee owners?
I have no idea.
That aren't actually being represented at all?
Yeah, no, I don't. Sorry. Good point.
Councillor Van Beek.
Hi, Jim. Thank you for making this submission. So currently what we're looking at is we've got about 2,600, 2,800 on the general roll in Wairoa. currently, and Ngāruaroa is 19,000. So you can see there's a huge disparity, and we've got to be very careful that we don't, because we can't have it either way, you know, whether we have land representation on land area or on population, because if we do it on land area, there's a few councillors here that now might as well walk out and leave because, you know, very small areas but very high population. It's a conundrum. So as long as you're aware of that, that big difference between the two numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So thank you for your submission and the expression from your members. My question relates to particularly the boundary changes. So I picked up your points around the concerns of representation for our rural sector. But around the proposed boundary changes, did the Federated Farmers have an opportunity to canvass or speak directly to, particularly the residents of Eskdale and within your catchment, around their impressions of what that impact might be? What opportunity has Federated Farmers had to talk particularly with the Eskdale through to Moahaka residents in their catchment around their concerns around a boundary change? Did you get an impression?
Not a big impression from them as such, but they certainly have not a lot of in common with Wairau as far as like it's different councils. The councils are here. Their community of interest is Napier Hastings, not Wairau as such. So that was the concern that we picked up there.
Thank you.
Thank you. One last question, Councillor Foss.
Thanks very much, Jim. Just on the, not on the handout, but on the earlier submission, you talked about a bit of discomfort with the consultation from this council, and it was compared to Hastings' information that they've provided going through a similar process. And to quote here, because a lot of the discussion has been around the numbers, for example, on our HBRC site, the tab titled the plus minus 10% rule has only a generic discussion on section 19.5.2 of the Local Electoral Act. It will be more helpful if the discussion about which constituencies meet this rule and which don't is included under this tab. The reader has to go and look at the general constituencies tab to find this discussion. And I wonder if you want to, anything you want to add to that. I mean, this is a very significant issue, and thank you so much for your organisation's submission here. But as you point out, it's very hard to get to the nitty-gritty of what's going on. And so I wonder if you've got any further comment to that. And you also make a suggested change as part of that submission.
Yeah, it's just the ease of getting that information, and because it is an important issue, that differences. We think it should be right out there up front and easy to find. It was there, but you sort of, with a lot of things, you have to hunt a bit more for it, and that just makes it more difficult for people to be informed and make informed submissions.
Thank you. Just in closing, I just want to thank you for your submission, Jim. We always value the opinion and advice of Federated Farmers, but I always enjoy the bit of a jousting with on occasions, in that I get very often the comment that the rural industries are underrepresented, that we don't have voices hardly ever heard, we're squeezed out and take the money for us, you don't listen to us. And facts are stubborn things, so I quite often point out that the chairs of this regional council have been predominantly from the rural sector, regardless of the numbers of elected members are from the urban area. So I think they haven't been too bad. So
good people are from the rural area.
I knew you could make with that. That's exactly right. That's what Benton would always argue. Anyway, I just want to thank you.
Thank you very much.
Your time. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, Jim.
Okay.
Chair, where are you from? Are you rural now?
I've been dragged to the rural area. I'm on the fringes. If you call Fernhill rural.
How many sheep have you got?
I've got 9 lambs.
That's right.
Sorry, what's that?
Transurban.
Transurban.
Are they fenced off from the waterway?
Okay, well, that's kind of...
Waterway, you would say.
I think that's kind of it, councillors. What's next?
Sorry, Chair, just before we close, could we please resolve to receive and accept the written and verbal submissions, just to close off that official
Yeah, I thought that's all we had to do. I'm just getting right back to the top up here to our resolutions. We are not revolutionary in this organisation, we're resolutionary. So, would somebody like to move that we receive both written and oral?
I'm happy to move that, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Foley, would someone like to second it?
Yeah.
Councillor Van Beek, any discussion?
Oh, just thank everyone that obviously participated in the process and either sent their submissions in or came to speak today.
Chair, do we need to make any ruling on the submissions that were out of scope?
I think we will do that when we come to deliberation. So we'll have a session shortly on deliberation. We'll make our deliberation and we'll do that later. So this is just a procedural motion to accept. We'll then go through deliberation later. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Carried. I think that's it for the day, team.